Hello. So, as we know, humans have looked at the stars not just to navigate the seas or mark the seasons, but also to understand ourselves, our minds, our souls, and even our habits. So today, I want to explore how ancient philosophies used astrology as a key to unlock the mysteries of our habitual nature. Now, habits, those repeated behaviors we often take for granted, were never seen as mere routine or chance. Instead, it was believed our habits are reflections of cosmic patterns, a bridge between the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of our daily lives. Now, when we speak of habits in astrology, we're not just referring to routines or behaviors in the modern sense. Historically, astrologers saw habits as being laced into the fabric of character, the rhythms and tendencies that shape how we live, act, and even evolve. Now, since ancient times, the heavens were believed to reflect not only the course of events, but also the internal patterns that guide our lives. In Hellenistic astrology, for example, the planets were thought to reveal a person's ethos, their temperament, their natural inclinations, and their habitual ways of being. Now, even the Stoics, who were skeptical of deterministic fate, believed that studying nature's cycles, including those of the stars, could help us better understand and master ourselves. The medieval astrologers spoke of natura and habitudo, the natural constitution and the habitual condition, as strongly intertwined and shaped in part by the positions of the planets at birth. And these insights tell us that what we do repeatedly is not just behavioral, it's symbolic and often deeply astrological. The Hermetic principle, as above, so below, which originated in Hellenistic Egypt, expresses nicely this interconnectedness. The Corpus Hermeticum states that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of one thing. Now, this teaching tells us that the universe's order is mirrored in us, including in our habits. And when we cultivate habits, we either align ourselves with cosmic harmony or create inner discord. Now, I keep a small notebook with me to write down things I might forget. So if you see me looking down occasionally, especially when I'm quoting someone, it's just because some of these quotes are a bit too long to fit in my brain. To continue, Greek thinkers deepened this understanding. Pythagoras believed that the stars and planets moved according to divine harmony and that this celestial music influenced the human soul. Plato similarly saw the soul as microcosm of the cosmos, shaped by the heavenly bodies. Aristotle introduced the idea of hexis, or stable disposition formed through repeated actions. And he wrote in Ethica Nicomacheia, or Nicomachean Ethics, moral virtue comes about as a result of habit. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. And what this tells us is that our habits greatly shape our character. Now, the Stoics later emphasized this, with Epictetus saying, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So for them, astrology helped reveal individual tendencies, guiding the cultivation or correction of habits aligned with reason and nature. In ancient Egypt, a complex concept of Mahat, which encompasses truth, justice, balance, cosmic harmony, and most importantly, order, was used. Now, Mahat was also their goddess, depicted with an ostrich feather on her head, thus representing truth, and she was a key figure in the afterlife, where the heart of the deceased was weighed against her feather in the judgment scene. Now, pharaohs and priests believed that living according to Mahat meant aligning one's habits with cosmic order. Their Book of the Dead states, "I have acted with Mahat, I have not done evil." Now, this reflected ethical habits as cosmic necessity. Now, Hellenistic astrology, which was developed in Alexandria, combined Egyptian and Greek insights, arranging how planets influence personality and habits. Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos teaches that the stars incline, they do not compel, meaning our habits are influenced by the stars, but not absolutely determined, thus highlighting personal responsibility in habit formation. For example, Saturn's influence was seen as a teacher of discipline and endurance, but also of restriction, shaping habits of perseverance, or, if unbalanced, stubbornness and melancholy. Now, in India, Vedic astrology, or Jyotish, is intertwined with the philosophical concepts of karma and samskaras. These are subtle mental impressions that form habits across lifetimes, or in another context, the diverse rites of passage of a human being from conception to cremation. Now, the Bhagavad Gita teaches that it is desire, it is anger born of passion, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. And this points to habitual patterns fueled by the mind's attachments. Now, Jyotish reads the influence of the Navagrahas or 9 planets on these patterns. For instance, Rahu is linked to intense desires and compulsive behaviors, while Ketu represents detachment and spiritual habits. Patanjali, a sage in ancient India, in the Yoga Sutras, this is a foundational text on yoga philosophy and practice, teaches how habitual tendencies or vasanas can be transcended through self-awareness and discipline, saying that when the mind is purified, the habits no longer bind us. Now, you don't know this, but I used to teach yoga and I'm very much into it. So astrology offers personalized guidance on when and how to perform actions to change habits through cosmic timing and spiritual practices. Across these traditions, we can see a shared truth. Habits are not random, but cosmic reflections. So by understanding your astrological blueprint, be it your sun sign, moon, or planetary placements, this illuminates your habitual strengths and challenges. At their core, habits are tendencies toward repetition. They can be either beneficial or detrimental depending on their nature. In astrology, Saturn has a strong influence over habits. It governs structure and routine, and its presence often makes habits more fixed and difficult to change. Now, the moon also plays a crucial role in habit formation. Through its automatic and instinctive nature, it shapes our everyday behaviors and functional activities. Now, the moon's aspects and its position in chart reveal much about a person's general habits. So, for instance, when the moon is well aspected in Taurus, it often brings about methodical and consistent routines. Now, the sun, on the other hand, influences our core tendencies and aspirations. And these initial impulses are often picked up by the moon and repeated over time, eventually becoming automatic, unconscious behaviors. Also, the influence of the passive or negative signs and planets is tied to the formation of habits, whether good or bad, because they are more closely connected to the unconscious and subconscious parts of the mind. Now, tendencies toward unhelpful habits can be indicated, for instance, when Saturn is conjunct or in hard aspect with Mars or Venus by direction, or when Jupiter forms a square or opposition to the Sun. Now, other indications may include when Venus is afflicted at birth, particularly by Mars, or when placed in Virgo in the 6th house, again forming difficult aspects. Now, that said, take this with a grain of salt. No single aspect tells the whole story. One aspect is not destiny. The entire chart must be considered. In fact, Saturn-Mars conjunctions, which are often considered challenging, actually work quite well for many individuals. Now, health-related carelessness can sometimes be seen when Venus is afflicted in Aries, especially when it's positioned in angular houses. Individuals with the Sun, Moon, or multiple planets in fixed signs, especially when placed in angular houses, usually become what we call creatures of habit. And this is mostly seen in charts with strong Taurus or Scorpio energy. Now, these patterns may be deeply ingrained and resistant to change. In contrast, mutable signs, so Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, often form habits more fluidly. There may be more adaptability, but also more fluctuation and inconsistency. Temporary habits can also form under the influence of directions or progressions, but these are often transient. It's the birth chart that reveals our core tendencies, the ones that repeat themselves over time. Now, the moon is perhaps the most powerful symbol of habit in the entire chart. It rules instinct, memory, and emotion, all the ingredients of habitual behavior. Its placement can show how we react before we think, how we soothe ourselves, and how we return to old patterns. I've been reading Carl Jung a lot lately, and while he didn't write specifically about habits in relation to astrology, he did respect that astrology is a symbolic system reflecting the psyche. Now, he often spoke about the unconscious roots of behavior and the importance of becoming aware of the patterns that shape our lives, many of which are habitual. Now, his ideas have greatly influenced modern psychological astrology, where habits are often linked with the moon, Saturn, and the unconscious forces these planets represent. Now, Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In astrology, we often look to the moon and Saturn as indicators of unconscious patterns, of our habits, routines, and default behaviors. Now, when we bring awareness to these influences, we can begin to shape our lives with greater intention. Now, Jung also described astrology as the summation of all the psychological knowledge of antiquity. So he saw the planets and signs not just as celestial bodies, but as symbolic mirrors of the psyche, mapping the habits and tendencies we may not even be aware of. Dorotheus of Sidon, one of the earliest systematic astrologers, described how the signs of the zodiac reflect our behavioral tendencies. He noted that those born under fixed signs are often governed by steady, unchanging routines, habits that are difficult to break. In contrast, mutable signs bring more flexible and shifting behaviors. Now, he also pointed to the moon as a guide to a person's natural rhythms and tendencies, what we might today recognize as their habits. Firmicus Maternus, a Roman astrologer and philosopher, explored how planetary patterns could create fixed routines, sometimes even leading to compulsions or repetitive behaviors that feel like fate. He warned that Saturn in particular can bind a person to their habits, creating structure but also rigidity. For Firmicus, astrology revealed the patterns we must become aware of if we wish to evolve. Now, throughout the medieval and Renaissance periods, astrologers and philosophers continued exploring how the planets shape not just our destinies, but our daily behaviors, what we again might now call habits. Now, the Persian astrologer Abu Mashar taught that the moon and the ascendant reveal our natural inclinations and routines, while Saturn influenced fixed, repetitive behaviors that can become difficult to break. And these patterns, he believed, form part of our character and daily life. Now, later on, the Renaissance philosopher and astrologer Marsilio Ficino warned of Saturn's power to bind the soul in cycles of melancholy and inertia, patterns that resemble modern notions of habitual thinking or emotional loops. Now, the occultist Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa saw habitual behavior as the echo of planetary forces imprinted on the soul, especially those of the moon and Saturn. But he, like Ficino, believed that through self-awareness, ritual, and alignment with cosmic rhythms, we could transform these patterns and live more freely. Astrology, at its heart, is about patterns. And what are habits if not the patterns we embody over time? Now, astrology doesn't lock us into these patterns, but it somehow reveals them. And in doing so, it offers us a choice. The ancient cultures and philosophies remind us that habits are more than just repeated actions. They are a language spoken between the stars and ourselves. And so when we look at a chart, we're not just looking for habits in the ordinary sense. We're looking at the soul's tendencies, what it leans toward, what it resists, what it repeats, and where, with intention, transformation might begin. Thank you for being here today. Maybe this video offered you a new perspective, that our habits aren't just actions, but echoes of something greater shaped by time, energy, and maybe even the stars. Rumi, the 13th century greatest Sufi mystic and poet in the Persian language, once wrote, "As you start to walk on the way appears." So if any part of this spoke to your journey, I would like to hear from you. So share your thoughts in the comments, maybe how your sign influences your daily flow. Also, please like and subscribe and join me again next week as we keep uncovering the wisdom written in the sky. Until then, stay open, trust your rhythm, stay grounded, and keep aligning with the energy that moves you forward. Bye.